The death of King Jaehaerys II left the Iron Throne vacant and the realm uneasy. Lords gathered in King's Landing expecting continuity, not rupture. Aerys Targaryen, young and untested, entered the capital not as a conqueror, but as an heir shaped by lineage and expectation. The court observed him closely as banners were raised and bells rang across the city. His coronation followed ancient custom, oaths sworn, the crown placed upon his silver-gold hair, and the swords of the Kingsguard standing silent behind him. The lords bent the knee, some in loyalty, others in calculation. At this moment, Aerys inspired cautious optimism. He spoke of justice, renewal, and strength, promising a reign that would restore Targaryen glory. None present could yet see how this ascension would reshape Westeros through fire, fear, and war. The coronation of Aerys II took place within the Red Keep as King's Landing observed in controlled silence. The ceremony was not a celebration of conquest, but of lawful succession. Nobles from across Westeros assembled inside the throne room, standing beneath the banners of House Targaryen. Guards lined the walls, unmoving and armored, as protocol was followed without deviation. Aerys entered the hall dressed in royal garments, his appearance youthful and composed, fitting the expectations of a new reign. The crown of the Dragon Lords was presented and placed upon his head before the gathered court. One by one, the assembled lords bent the knee, acknowledging his authority as king. Outside the Red Keep, bells rang across the city, signaling the completion of the ceremony. The Iron Throne was claimed not by force, but by inheritance, marking the official beginning of Aerys II's rule over the Seven Kingdoms. Soon after the early days of his reign, Aerys II made a decisive political appointment within the Red Keep. Tywin Lannister was summoned to King's Landing and formally named Hand of the King, a position that carried immense authority over the daily governance of the Seven Kingdoms. The ceremony was restrained and administrative rather than celebratory. Lords observed in silence as the office passed to a member of House Lannister, signaling a shift toward firm and structured rule. The appointment was understood as a declaration of intent. The crown would be supported by discipline, order, and strict administration. From this moment forward, royal decisions would move through the Hand's authority before reaching the realm. The court took careful note of the balance forming between throne and council, aware that the Hand's influence would soon be felt across Westeros. The first small council meeting of the new reign was convened inside the Red Keep shortly after the coronation. This gathering was procedural, not ceremonial, focused on restoring order after the transition of power. The council chamber was closed to the public, guarded heavily, and arranged for administration rather than display. Scrolls, ledgers, and reports were placed upon the table, reflecting matters of law, finance, and royal authority. The atmosphere was controlled and deliberate, with each participant aware that this meeting would establish how power functioned under the new king. Decisions were discussed formally, without open conflict or spectacle. The meeting signaled the beginning of structured governance, where policy would be shaped behind doors rather than in the throne room. For the court, this council marked a shift from ritual to rule, defining how the Seven Kingdoms would be managed in the early days of the reign. With the court stabilized and governance underway, the crown turned its attention to the realm's finances. Royal tax reforms were introduced to restore order to a treasury strained by years of inefficiency. The measures focused on standardizing levies, enforcing collection, and reducing exemptions previously granted through favoritism. Records were reviewed, accounts audited, and new expectations delivered to royal officials across the capital. These reforms were administrative rather than popular, designed to strengthen the authority of the throne rather than win public favor. Within the Red Keep, decisions were issued through formal decrees, backed by written orders and seals. The changes signaled that the new reign would prioritize control and accountability over leniency. Though little spectacle accompanied these reforms, their impact was immediate within the machinery of government. The restructuring of royal taxation marked an early assertion of centralized power, setting financial foundations that would support the crown's authority in the years ahead. With administrative control established, attention turned to the physical security of the capital. Repairs to King's Landing's defenses were ordered to address years of neglect and erosion. Sections of the city walls were inspected, weakened stone replaced, and battlements reinforced to restore their defensive strength. Work crews labored along the ramparts, hauling stone and timber under the supervision of royal officials. Gates were examined for structural weakness, hinges reset, and wooden elements reinforced with iron fittings. These efforts were practical rather than symbolic, focused on readiness rather than display. The work proceeded methodically, without ceremony, reflecting the crown's intent to secure the city against future threats. Though no enemy stood at the gates, the repairs sent a clear signal that the capital would not be left vulnerable. King's Landing was being prepared as a stronghold of authority, capable of withstanding unrest or attack should the realm's stability ever falter. As governance stabilized in King's Landing, the crown turned outward to strengthen royal income through foreign commerce. Trade with the free cities was expanded through negotiated agreements focused on shipping routes, tariffs, and the flow of goods across the narrow sea. Merchant vessels arrived carrying spices, silks, metals, and coin, while Westerosi exports moved outward in return. Royal officials supervised docking, inspected cargo, and recorded duties owed to the crown. These arrangements were practical, aimed at revenue rather than diplomacy, and handled through port authorities rather than open court. The harbor became a controlled point of exchange where order replaced informal dealing. Contracts were issued, seals applied, and schedules enforced to ensure consistency. This expansion of trade strengthened the treasury and tied the capital more closely to Essos without military involvement. The agreements marked a deliberate use of commerce as an instrument of stability and royal authority. Following the growth of trade and revenue, the crown moved to strengthen control over the seas by expanding the royal fleet. Orders were issued to construct new warships and refit aging vessels already in service. Shipyards along the harbor worked continuously, with hulls laid, planks shaped, and masts raised under royal supervision. Timber, pitch, and iron fittings were gathered in large quantities to support construction. Naval officials inspected progress, ensuring ships met standards for durability and readiness. Crews were organized and trained while dock workers prepared rigging and sails. The effort focused on long-term security rather than immediate conflict, aiming to protect shipping lanes and assert authority along the coast. This expansion marked a shift toward maritime strength as a pillar of royal power. By investing in ships rather than armies, the crown reinforced its ability to project control beyond the walls of King's Landing. After new laws were issued by royal decree, their enforcement began within the capital. City watch patrols increased across major streets, gates, and marketplaces to ensure compliance with the crown's orders. Officials inspected merchants, questioned offenders, and recorded violations without public announcement. Arrests were carried out quietly, with those accused taken into custody for processing rather than spectacle. Notices were posted in public spaces outlining expectations, while patrols maintained a visible presence to discourage resistance. The enforcement was deliberate and controlled, emphasizing authority rather than punishment. No crowds gathered, and no public proclamations accompanied the actions. The goal was order, not fear. Through steady patrols and routine checks, the laws became part of daily life in the city. This phase marked the transition from legislation to action, demonstrating that royal authority extended beyond written decrees and into the streets of King's Landing itself. With order established in the capital, public festivals were permitted to signal stability and calm within King's Landing. These gatherings were carefully controlled, designed to reassure the population rather than encourage excess. Streets were cleared, banners raised, and markets expanded temporarily to accommodate increased activity. Musicians played in open squares, food stalls operated under watch, and crowds moved freely but under observation. The festivals were not celebrations of victory or conquest, but of continuity and peace. City authorities monitored attendance, ensuring gatherings remained orderly and brief. No royal appearances were made, and no proclamations accompanied the events. Instead, the absence of unrest was the message itself. The festivals allowed daily life to resume publicly, reinforcing the sense that the city was secure. By permitting controlled celebration, the crown demonstrated confidence in its authority while maintaining firm oversight of the population. Tensions that had remained contained elsewhere finally surfaced openly in the town of Duskendale. Local authorities refused to comply with royal demands, withholding taxes and denying access to crown representatives. Gates were closed, and communication with the capital was deliberately obstructed. Armed men took control of key positions within the town, while loyal officials were confined or expelled. The defiance was calculated rather than chaotic, organized to challenge royal authority without declaring open war. Within Duskendale, preparations were made for resistance as supplies were secured and defenses reinforced. News of the refusal spread quietly, signaling that the crown's authority was no longer absolute in all corners of the realm. This moment marked a turning point, transforming political tension into open confrontation. The rebellion did not begin with battle, but with denial and control, setting the stage for a crisis that would soon draw the full attention of the Iron Throne. In response to the defiance at Duskendale, the king chose direct involvement rather than distant command. Aerys II departed King's Landing with a small royal escort, intending to confront the situation personally and assert royal authority. The decision bypassed prolonged negotiation and relied instead on presence and rank. The royal party traveled by road along the coast, moving deliberately toward the rebellious town. Guards maintained close formation as the king's column advanced, banners visible but restrained. The journey was not marked by ceremony or public announcement, reflecting confidence rather than caution. Upon nearing Duskendale, the escort slowed, assessing the closed gates and fortified posture of the town. This movement transformed a political dispute into a direct royal engagement. By placing himself within reach of the defiant stronghold, Aerys altered the nature of the crisis, binding the authority of the crown to the outcome of what would follow. The confrontation at Duskendale ended not in negotiation, but in sudden reversal. When the royal party approached the town under the expectation of discussion, the gates opened only briefly and under controlled terms. Instead of submission, armed men moved swiftly to isolate the king from his escort. Royal guards were surrounded and disarmed without open battle, overwhelmed by numbers and confined space. Aerys II was seized and taken into custody within the town, removed from public sight. The capture was deliberate and calculated, designed to secure the king as leverage rather than provoke immediate war. No proclamations were made, and no resistance followed once control was established. News of the king's capture spread quickly but quietly, carried by messengers rather than banners. With the Iron Throne's authority physically restrained, the crisis at Duskendale entered a new and far more dangerous phase. Following the capture of the king, the crown responded with force rather than negotiation. Royal armies were assembled and dispatched to Duskendale, surrounding the town by land and sea. Camps were established beyond the walls, cutting off access routes and supply lines. Siege engines were positioned, though no immediate assault was ordered. Ships blockaded the harbor, preventing movement or escape by water. The objective was containment, not destruction, as the town was isolated under constant watch. Inside the walls, tension mounted as resources dwindled and communication ceased. Outside, the royal host maintained discipline, preparing for a prolonged operation rather than a swift strike. The siege transformed the rebellion from a localized defiance into a realm-wide crisis. With the town encircled and pressure steadily increasing, the fate of Duskendale became tied to endurance rather than battle, as the crown waited for the standoff to break. With the siege dragging on and the king held captive, a decisive and dangerous action was taken. Barristan Selmy volunteered to enter Duskendale alone, choosing stealth over force. Under cover of darkness, he slipped past the town's defenses and moved through guarded streets without raising alarm. The operation relied on speed, precision, and knowledge of the town's layout rather than support or distraction. Inside the stronghold, Barristan located the king's place of confinement and eliminated resistance swiftly enough to avoid a wider confrontation. Aerys II was freed and removed from captivity before the defenders could organize a response. The escape was completed without open battle, denying the rebels their greatest leverage. By dawn, the king was beyond the town's walls, and the balance of the crisis shifted immediately. The rescue ended the stalemate and transformed the siege from containment into collapse. After the king was freed, retribution followed swiftly and without negotiation. House Darklyn was declared guilty of treason for the capture and confinement of the king, and punishment was carried out as an example to the realm. Members of the house were taken into custody and brought before royal authority, not for trial, but for sentence. Executions were ordered to eliminate the bloodline that had led the defiance. The process was controlled and methodical, conducted under guard and without public ceremony. No appeals were heard and no mercy was offered. The purpose was finality rather than spectacle. By erasing House Darklyn, the crown made clear that rebellion against royal authority would be answered with total destruction. The executions marked the violent end of the Duskendale crisis and signaled a hardened shift in royal policy, replacing restraint with fear as a tool of rule. In the aftermath of the king's captivity, the crown moved to prevent any repetition of such vulnerability. New royal security laws were issued, reshaping how access to the monarch and royal spaces was controlled. Restrictions were placed on travel, audiences, and unsupervised approaches to the crown. Guard rotations were formalized, patrol schedules tightened, and checkpoints expanded within and around royal residences. Written orders outlined stricter procedures for escorts, gate control, and verification of messengers. These measures were administrative but severe, reducing personal access in favor of layered protection. The changes were implemented quietly, without public announcement, yet their presence was immediately felt within the capital. Movement near royal quarters became regulated, and authority was enforced through routine checks rather than force. The laws marked a decisive shift toward isolation and caution, embedding fear of vulnerability into governance. Security, rather than openness, became the defining priority of royal rule. In the wake of heightened security concerns, the Crown authorized a new and unsettling measure. Royal Pyromancers were formally appointed to serve within the capital, tasked with producing and maintaining stores of wildfire under direct oversight. Their role was administrative and technical, bound by strict rules of access and containment. Workshops were prepared, sealed chambers designated, and records established to track production and storage. The appointment did not involve public display or announcement. Instead, it unfolded quietly through written orders and guarded facilities. The presence of pyromancers signaled a shift toward extreme deterrence, introducing a weapon of last resort into royal planning. Officials supervised procedures closely, aware of the dangers involved. No use of wildfire was ordered at this stage. Its value lay in preparedness rather than action. This decision embedded fear and volatility into the machinery of governance, expanding the tools available to royal authority beyond conventional force. In a stark escalation of punishment, the Crown authorized the first execution by wildfire. The decision marked a departure from traditional methods intended to demonstrate absolute deterrence rather than public spectacle. Preparations were conducted under strict control within a secured courtyard. Wildfire containers were brought from guarded storage and positioned away from onlookers. The condemned was restrained at a distance, with guards maintaining a wide perimeter to prevent disorder. No announcement accompanied the act, and access was limited to officials and armed watch. The execution was carried out swiftly, without ceremony, and the area was sealed immediately afterward. No public display followed, and the site was cleared before crowds could gather. The use of wildfire sent a clear message throughout the capital. Royal justice now possessed a fearsome instrument. This moment marked a turning point in enforcement, introducing terror as a deliberate component of authority. Following its first use, wildfire was no longer treated as a rare reserve, but as a strategic asset. Orders were issued to expand storage beneath King's Landing, placing sealed caches of wildfire in subterranean chambers and tunnels below key districts. The storage sites were isolated, reinforced, and guarded, designed to remain hidden from the public and inaccessible without authorization. Containers were cataloged and distributed across multiple underground locations to reduce risk while ensuring availability. Access routes were controlled through locked passages and constant watch. No announcements were made regarding these measures, and knowledge of the caches was limited to a small circle of officials. The city above continued its daily life unaware of what lay beneath its streets. By embedding wildfire into the foundations of the capital, the Crown transformed King's Landing itself into a weapon, tying the city's safety and destruction to the will of royal authority. After the king was recovered and the immediate crisis passed, responsibility for military readiness shifted within the royal household. Prince Rhaegar was placed in command of the royal forces, marking his first direct role in matters of armed authority. The appointment was measured and deliberate, intended to restore confidence after the instability caused by the king's capture. Rhaegar's role focused on organization rather than combat. Troops were assembled, command structures clarified, and readiness reviewed within royal encampments near the capital. Officers received orders through formal channels, emphasizing discipline and coordination. No campaign was announced and no banners were raised for war. Instead, the assumption of command signaled preparation and restraint. By placing the prince at the head of the forces, the Crown presented continuity and control, reinforcing the line of succession while ensuring that military authority rested with a figure associated with order rather than fear. In response to rising instability, the Crown ordered the formal mustering of the royal host. Forces were summoned to assemble near the capital, gathering men, equipment, and supplies under centralized command. Units arrived in organized groups, forming ranks as officers conducted counts and inspections. Armor and weapons were distributed, banners assigned, and camp structures expanded to accommodate the growing numbers. The mustering was deliberate and controlled, focused on readiness rather than immediate action. No declaration of war accompanied the assembly, and no destination was announced. Instead, the host was prepared to respond quickly should royal authority be challenged again. The scale of the gathering served as a warning without movement, signaling strength through presence alone. By concentrating forces under royal oversight, the Crown reinforced its capacity to act decisively while maintaining restraint. The mustering marked a clear transition from internal security to broader military preparedness. In an effort to project unity and normalcy after years of tension, the Crown announced a grand tourney to be held at Harrenhal. The proclamation was delivered through official channels, carried by messengers, and posted in major settlements. The event was presented as a celebration of chivalry and peace, intended to draw knights and nobles from across the realm. Details outlined the location, the scale of the contests, and the promise of honor and reward for those who would attend. No mention was made of recent unrest or security concerns. Instead, the announcement emphasized tradition, spectacle, and the gathering of the realm's martial elite. The choice of Harrenhal, vast and symbolic, underscored the ambition of the event. As word spread, preparations quietly began and expectations grew. The announcement marked a pause in visible conflict, creating anticipation for a gathering that would soon carry consequences far beyond sport. The Tourney of Harrenhal was held on a scale rarely seen in the realm. Knights, nobles, and retainers gathered beneath the towering ruins, filling the surrounding fields with tents, banners, and pavilions. Lists were prepared, stands erected, and crowds assembled at a controlled distance to witness the contests. Jousts and martial displays unfolded over several days, governed by strict rules and overseen by appointed officials. The atmosphere combined celebration with restraint, presenting an image of unity after years of unease. Though the event centered on sport, its significance extended beyond the lists. The gathering brought together many of the realm's leading houses in one place, creating a rare convergence of power and influence. Conversations and observations carried as much weight as victories won in the field. The tourney stood as a grand public spectacle, masking deeper tensions beneath ceremony, tradition, and controlled pageantry. At the height of the Tourney of Harrenhal, a moment occurred that would echo far beyond the lists. The crown of winter roses was presented not to a lady of the South, but to Lyanna Stark. Before the assembled nobles and spectators, the honor of Queen of Love and Beauty was bestowed, drawing immediate attention and quiet surprise. The gesture stood apart from the expected patterns of courtesy and alliance that usually governed such ceremonies. The crowd observed in controlled silence as the crown was offered, aware that the choice carried meaning beyond admiration. Though the tourney continued, the moment lingered, spoken of in hushed conversations throughout the camps and pavilions. The crowning altered the tone of the gathering, introducing unease beneath celebration. What appeared to be a single ceremonial act subtly shifted perceptions, binding personal honor to political consequence. The roses marked not just victory, but the beginning of deeper tension within the realm. Not long after the tourney ended, Lyanna Stark vanished from the public eye. Her absence was first noted quietly, without alarm or announcement. Expected appearances did not occur, and inquiries produced no clear answers. Those who had last seen her spoke only of routine movements before her disappearance. No declaration was issued, and no explanation followed. As days passed, uncertainty spread among the households connected to her. The lack of information transformed concern into tension as rumors began to circulate without confirmation. The disappearance was not treated as an open crime, yet it disrupted the fragile calm established after Harrenhal. Silence from those in authority deepened unease rather than resolving it. What had been a celebrated moment at the tourney gave way to unanswered questions. Lyanna's absence marked a shift from ceremony to crisis, setting events in motion that would soon draw multiple houses into conflict, driven by fear, honor, and suspicion. In the days following the tourney, uncertainty replaced celebration. Lyanna Stark was no longer present among her kin or the encampments surrounding Harrenhal. Her absence was noted quietly at first, then with growing concern as searches failed to locate her. No announcement explained her departure, and no clear witnesses could confirm when she had last been seen. Personal belongings were missing, suggesting intent rather than accident. The camps remained outwardly calm, but conversations shifted as questions spread. The disappearance disrupted the fragile order created by the tourney, transforming a ceremonial gathering into the source of quiet alarm. Without banners raised or accusations spoken, the matter unsettled those who understood the weight of her absence. What had been a moment of honor now cast a long shadow. Lyanna's disappearance marked the beginning of uncertainty that would soon extend far beyond Harrenhal, altering the course of relationships and loyalties across the realm. In the wake of Lyanna Stark's disappearance, the crown moved to assert authority through command rather than explanation. A royal summons was issued to Rhaegar Stark, Lord of Winterfell, ordering his presence in King's Landing. The message carried the weight of royal demand rather than request, delivered through official channels without clarification of charges or purpose. In the north, the order was received with restraint and concern, its wording leaving little room for delay or refusal. No accusations were announced publicly, and no assurances accompanied the command. The summons shifted uncertainty into confrontation, drawing the Stark family directly into the orbit of royal judgment. What had begun as a troubling absence now became a matter of authority between crown and lord. By compelling Rhaegar Stark to answer before the throne, the crown escalated a private crisis into a political reckoning, setting the stage for consequences that would soon follow. The summons culminated in a grim confrontation at the seat of royal authority. Rhaegar Stark and his son Brandon were brought before the Iron Throne to answer for their defiance and demands regarding Lyanna's disappearance. The proceedings bore little resemblance to a traditional trial. Accusations were stated, loyalty questioned, and judgment shaped by royal will rather than evidence. Guards filled the hall, maintaining order as the Starks stood isolated before the court. No witnesses were called, and no formal defense was offered space to unfold. The atmosphere was tense and final, with the outcome already implied by the manner of the proceedings. What unfolded was less an examination of guilt than a demonstration of power. By forcing the Starks to answer in this way, the crown transformed grievance into condemnation. The trial marked the collapse of dialogue between crown and north, replacing appeal with absolute authority. The trial concluded not with mercy, but with immediate sentence. Rhaegar Stark and his son Brandon were condemned to death without delay, their fate sealed by royal command. The executions were conducted within the capital under heavy guard, removed from public spectacle yet intended as a clear warning. Rhaegar was subjected to a cruel method designed to force suffering rather than swift death, while Brandon was restrained and compelled to witness the sentence carried out. No appeals were acknowledged and no intervention was permitted. The hall remained controlled, silent except for the presence of authority enforcing judgment. The executions shattered any remaining trust between the crown and the North, transforming grievance into irrevocable bloodshed. What had begun as a summons ended as annihilation of a noble house's leadership. With their deaths, restraint vanished from royal justice. The executions marked a point of no return, ensuring that reconciliation was no longer possible and that the realm would soon answer violence with rebellion. After the executions in King's Landing, the Crown issued a final demand meant to crush resistance before it could form. Jon Arryn, Lord of the Eyrie, was ordered to surrender his wards to royal justice. The command was absolute, allowing no negotiation or delay. In the Vale, the order was received and considered, its implications unmistakable. Compliance would have signaled submission, refusal meant open defiance. Jon Arryn chose to deny the king's command. No public declaration accompanied the decision, but the refusal was formal and deliberate, delivered through official channels. With that choice, loyalty to the crown was broken. The act transformed outrage into rebellion, binding honor and obligation against royal authority. By refusing the order, Jon Arryn ignited open resistance, drawing the Vale into conflict and giving shape to opposition that had until then remained unspoken. The refusal marked the true beginning of open war against the Iron Throne. The breaking point came with open defiance. In response to the executions of the Starks and the king's demand for submission, Robert Baratheon declared rebellion against the Iron Throne. The declaration was not issued in secrecy, but spoken openly among his allies, transforming outrage into resolve. Banners were raised, loyalties declared, and the choice for war made unmistakable. Robert's declaration rejected royal authority outright, framing resistance as a matter of honor rather than ambition. No attempt was made to negotiate or appeal further to the crown. The moment marked the transition from scattered resistance to organized uprising. With words alone, the realm crossed into war. Houses that had hesitated were now forced to choose sides. The declaration bound Robert's cause to those already in defiance, giving the rebellion a leader and a name. From this point forward, conflict was inevitable, and the fate of the Seven Kingdoms would be decided by force. With the deaths of his father and brother confirmed, Eddard Stark moved from restraint to action. In Winterfell, the decision was made to raise the banners of the North in open defiance of the Iron Throne. Messengers were dispatched to sworn houses, and the call to arms spread across the region. Lords and bannermen answered by assembling men, weapons, and provisions under Stark authority. The act was formal and deliberate, grounded in obligation rather than impulse. No speech of vengeance was required. The cause was understood. By raising the North, Ned Stark transformed grief into organized resistance, binding ancient loyalties to a common purpose. The mustering marked the North's entry into the widening conflict, aligning it with rebellion already underway elsewhere in the realm. What had been isolated acts of defiance now became a coordinated challenge. The raising of the banners ensured that war would no longer be distant, but unavoidable. The rebellion reached open battle at the port city of Gulltown. Loyalist forces attempted to hold the city and its harbor, seeking to deny the rebels access to the Vale's coastline. Rebel troops advanced against prepared defenses, engaging in a hard-fought struggle through streets, docks, and surrounding ground. The fighting was chaotic and costly, marked by determined resistance from the defenders and persistent pressure from the attackers. Despite initial setbacks, the rebel assault broke through, overwhelming loyalist positions and forcing a collapse of organized defense. The city fell after sustained combat, securing a vital port, and demonstrating that the rebellion could defeat royal forces in open conflict. The Battle of Gulltown marked the first major clash of the war and carried heavy losses. Its outcome confirmed that the conflict had escalated beyond declarations and musters into full-scale warfare, setting a violent precedent for the battles that would follow. As rebellion spread across the realm, securing powerful allies became essential. House Tully, rulers of the Riverlands, entered negotiations with the rebel cause at Riverrun. The discussions were direct and pragmatic, focused on mutual survival rather than ideology. The Riverlands stood vulnerable between Crown and rebels, making neutrality impossible. Terms were agreed that bound House Tully to the uprising through shared obligation and formal alliance. The agreement transformed scattered resistance into a broader coalition, linking the North, the Vale, and the Riverlands in common cause. Banners were pledged, forces promised, and political ties reinforced to ensure loyalty. The decision was not made lightly, but once taken, it was decisive. By joining the rebellion, House Tully committed its strength, territory, and legitimacy to the war against the Iron Throne. The alliance marked a crucial expansion of rebel power, shifting the balance from regional revolt toward realm-wide conflict. In response to open rebellion, the Iron Throne moved to assemble its military power. Orders were sent throughout loyal territories, commanding banners to answer the call to arms. Royal forces gathered near the capital and at key strongholds, forming the core of a unified host. Equipment was issued, supply lines organized, and command structures reinforced to prepare for sustained conflict. The mobilization was methodical rather than rushed, aimed at projecting strength and restoring control through overwhelming force. No single battlefield was named, and no immediate advance was announced. Instead, readiness itself became the message. Camps expanded as contingents arrived, their presence signaling that the Crown intended to meet rebellion with decisive power. The mobilization marked the Iron Throne's transition from enforcement to war footing. With loyal armies assembling under royal authority, the conflict entered a new phase where negotiation faded and force would determine the fate of the realm. With rebellion spreading across multiple regions, the Crown placed its military response into motion under direct royal command. Prince Rhaegar was appointed to lead the royal host in the field, moving beyond preparation into active engagement. The assembled army began its advance under his authority, banners unfurled as columns organized for movement. Discipline and order defined the march, with command structures clearly enforced and supply trains maintained behind the main force. The decision placed the burden of royal victory on the heir himself, binding the outcome of the war to his leadership. No battle was joined at this stage, but the movement signaled that the Crown would confront rebellion directly rather than react defensively. As the host advanced from its mustering grounds, the war entered a decisive phase. With Rhaegar at its head, the royal army transitioned from readiness to action, setting the stage for the major confrontations to come. With command established and the army in motion, the royal host advanced toward the Trident. Columns moved steadily along roads and open ground, maintaining formation as banners marked the direction of travel. Supply trains followed in ordered sequence, ensuring the army could sustain a prolonged approach. Scouts ranged ahead while rear guards secured the line of march, reflecting careful preparation rather than haste. The movement was deliberate, signaling intent to meet the rebels in decisive battle rather than skirmish at the edges of the war. As the host progressed, the landscape shifted from settled lands to contested ground, where the coming confrontation was anticipated but not yet begun. No engagement occurred during the march, yet tension increased with every mile covered. The advance toward the Trident represented commitment beyond reversal. By moving the full weight of the royal army toward the river crossings, the Crown set the conditions for a clash that would determine the direction of the war. The war reached its decisive confrontation at the Trident. Royal and rebel armies met along the river crossings, committing their full strength to open battle. Infantry formations advanced across muddy ground as cavalry charged along the flanks, banners marking shifting lines of control. The fighting was intense and sustained, with neither side yielding quickly. The river itself became a strategic barrier, shaping movement and limiting retreat. Amid the chaos, command and cohesion determined survival more than numbers alone. The battle raged for hours, its outcome uncertain until the royal line finally broke under relentless pressure. When the fighting ended, the river ran crowded with debris and abandoned equipment, and the field belonged to the rebels. The defeat shattered the Crown's military position in a single day. The Battle of the Trident ended any realistic hope of royal victory in the field, breaking the war's momentum and sealing the fate of the ruling dynasty. The Battle of the Trident ended not only with defeat, but with the loss of the Crown's heir. During the height of the fighting, Prince Rhaegar was struck down amid the chaos of the battlefield. His fall was not witnessed by all, but its impact was immediate. Royal banners faltered, formations lost cohesion, and command dissolved in confusion. The death of the prince transformed retreat into collapse, stripping the royal army of leadership and purpose. When word spread, resistance gave way to flight, and the river crossings were abandoned. Rhaegar's death ended the last hope of restoring royal control through the field army. He had carried the burden of the Crown's survival into battle, and with his fall, that burden was broken. The Trident became the grave of royal ambition, and the war's direction was decided. From this moment forward, the Iron Throne stood exposed, its fate no longer shielded by armies. With the death of the Crown's heir and the collapse of command, the royal army could no longer hold the field. What remained of the host began a disordered retreat from the Trident, abandoning positions that had been fiercely contested only hours before. Units withdrew along roads and river crossings, attempting to preserve what cohesion they could under pressure. Supplies were left behind, formations broken, and banners lowered as the army pulled back from the battlefield. The retreat was not a planned maneuver, but a necessary escape, driven by loss and confusion. Rear guards attempted to delay pursuit, while the main body moved away from the riverlands towards safer ground. The withdrawal marked the end of royal resistance in open battle. From this point, the Iron Throne no longer possessed an army capable of meeting the rebels head-on. The retreat confirmed the war's turning point, transforming royal authority from forceful presence into vulnerable flight. In the aftermath of the royal defeat, the balance of power shifted rapidly. The Lannister army began its march toward King's Landing, moving with speed and purpose. Columns advanced along established roads, banners clearly displayed to signal intent rather than resistance. The march was calculated, timed to arrive before the city could organize meaningful defense. No declaration of loyalty or hostility accompanied the movement, but the direction alone spoke clearly. Supply wagons followed close behind, and discipline within the ranks suggested preparation rather than desperation. The approach placed immense pressure on the capital, which now faced an advancing host without the protection of a victorious royal army. The march transformed uncertainty into immediate threat. By moving directly on King's Landing, the Lannisters positioned themselves to decide the war's outcome without fighting another major field battle. Their advance marked the final shift from open war to political seizure of power. With the arrival of hostile forces at the gates, order within King's Landing collapsed. The sack of the city began as disciplined advance gave way to uncontrolled violence. Gates were forced open, defenses overwhelmed, and soldiers flooded into the streets. Authority dissolved rapidly as looting, arson, and chaos spread through districts near the walls and markets. Civilians fled in panic, while guards either retreated or were swept aside. No clear command directed the destruction. It unfolded as a consequence of betrayal and opportunity. The capital, once protected by walls and royal power, became vulnerable within hours. Fires rose across the city as discipline vanished and fear ruled the streets. The sack was not a battle, but a breakdown, exposing the city to devastation from within. As the first wave of destruction spread, the fate of King's Landing was sealed. What followed would leave scars that no victory could erase. As the sack of King's Landing intensified, attention turned toward the city's most dangerous secret. The royal pyromancers, long associated with wildfire production and storage, were hunted down amid the chaos. Whether out of fear, vengeance, or necessity, armed men moved to eliminate them before wildfire could be unleashed. Their workshops and chambers were stormed, records destroyed, and control over the substance forcibly ended. The killings were swift and deliberate, carried out away from the public eye but with clear intent. By removing the pyromancers, the immediate threat of the city's destruction was reduced, even as violence continued elsewhere. No orders were announced, and no authority claimed responsibility. The act was preventative rather than judicial, driven by the belief that survival required eliminating those who could ignite catastrophe. The deaths of the pyromancers closed one of the darkest chapters of the sack, extinguishing a danger that had haunted the capital for years. As the city fell into chaos, the struggle for power narrowed to its final objective. Armed forces pushed through the inner defenses of King's Landing and seized the Red Keep. Guards loyal to the crown were overwhelmed or forced to withdraw as corridors, towers, and gates fell under hostile control. The capture was swift, driven by momentum from the sack rather than prolonged resistance. Control of the Red Keep meant control of the capital's heart, the seat of royal authority, command, and legitimacy. Once its gates were taken, any remaining pretense of royal security collapsed. The fortress that had symbolized stability for generations became occupied ground. No proclamation followed immediately. The seizure itself was declaration enough. By securing the Red Keep, the attackers ensured that the war would be decided not on open fields, but within the walls of power. The fall of the Red Keep marked the irreversible end of the Crown's control over King's Landing. With the Red Keep firmly under hostile control, the last remnants of royal authority were isolated. King Aerys II was confined to the throne room, cut off from the wider castle and placed under constant watch. His movements were restricted, access tightly controlled, and communication limited. The confinement was not announced publicly, but its effect was immediate within the keep. Guards stood between the king and the corridors he once commanded, reversing the balance of power that had defined his reign. The Iron Throne remained beneath him, yet its authority had become symbolic rather than real. Decisions were no longer enforced by command, but contained by circumstance. The confinement marked the collapse of effective royal rule, reducing the king to a guarded presence within his own seat of power. As the city burned beyond the walls, the throne room became a gilded prison, holding a ruler whose control over events had finally ended. With the Red Keep seized and the king confined, the final tension gathered within the throne room. Jaime Lannister, sworn to the Kingsguard, entered the chamber where Aerys II remained under guard. The meeting carried no ceremony and no witnesses beyond those posted at a distance. Authority and duty collided in silence. The king issued commands that could no longer be enforced, while the knight stood unmoved by rank alone. Years of loyalty, fear, and obligation narrowed to a single moment of confrontation. The Iron Throne loomed between ruler and protector, its presence a reminder of broken oaths and failing power. No immediate violence followed, but the balance was unmistakably altered. The confrontation stripped away illusion, exposing the gulf between command and control. Within the throne room, the last thread connecting the king to obedience was tested. What followed would decide whether the city would burn or finally fall silent. With the Red Keep lost and his power reduced to words alone, King Aerys II issued his final command. From within the throne room, he ordered that the city be burned, calling for wildfire to be ignited beneath King's Landing. The instruction was absolute, delivered with urgency and desperation rather than strategy. It was not a command to defend the throne, but to deny victory to all others. The order revealed the extent of the king's unraveling, transforming fear into a mandate for annihilation. No announcement followed, and no appeal to law or loyalty accompanied the demand. The fate of the city was reduced to whether the order would be obeyed or defied. With a single command, Aerys sought to erase King's Landing rather than surrender it. The moment placed the lives of countless people at the mercy of obedience, making the decision to act or refuse the final turning point of the war. At the moment when the city stood closest to annihilation, the wildfire plot was stopped. The chain of commands that would have carried the order into action was severed before ignition could occur. Access to the caches beneath King's Landing was blocked, messengers halted, and the final steps required to unleash the substance were prevented. The city remained intact not through proclamation, but through interruption. No flames rose from the streets, and no hidden chambers were breached. The danger that had loomed unseen beneath homes and markets was neutralized in silence. This act did not end the violence within the city, but it spared King's Landing from total destruction. The prevention of the plot marked the narrowest margin between survival and obliteration. In stopping the wildfire, the fate of hundreds of thousands was altered in an instant. The city endured, not because the order was never given, but because it was not obeyed. With royal authority shattered and control fractured, chaos spread through King's Landing. No single force governed the streets, and fear replaced order as the city reeled from sudden collapse. Armed groups moved without coordination, civilians fled in confusion, and rumors traveled faster than commands. Markets were abandoned, homes barred, and alleyways filled with uncertainty. Fires smoldered where earlier destruction had begun, while other districts remained tense but untouched. Guards no longer enforced consistent rule, answering instead to whoever held immediate power. The capital became a place of noise and silence at once, shouting in the streets, emptiness behind closed doors. Without proclamations or structure, the population endured disorder rather than battle. The chaos was not a single act of violence, but a condition that settled over the city, disrupting daily life and safety. King's Landing, once the center of rule, became a city waiting for authority to return, unsure of what form it would take. As the sack of King's Landing spread through the Red Keep, members of the royal household were seized one by one. Elia Martell, Princess of Dorne and wife to the fallen heir, was captured within the inner chambers of the castle. Surrounded by chaos and stripped of protection, she was taken under guard as control of the keep shifted completely. No formal charges were announced, and no authority offered explanation or assurance. Her capture was part of a broader collapse where rank and innocence provided no safety. The event unfolded away from the streets, but its significance was profound. Elia's confinement represented the vulnerability of the royal family at the war's end, reducing symbols of alliance and lineage to prisoners of circumstance. The capture did not end the violence, but it confirmed that the old order had fully fallen. Within the walls of the Red Keep, power now belonged entirely to those who had seized it. Within the seized Red Keep, the violence reached its most irreversible moment. Prince Aegon, the young son of the fallen heir, was killed during the sack. The act took place away from the streets, within the private spaces meant to shelter the royal family. No battle preceded it, and no resistance could prevent it. The death was not an act of war, but of finality, eliminating the last male child of the Targaryen line in the capital. With Aegon's death, the dynasty's future was severed in an instant. The event carried no announcement and required no justification. Its meaning was absolute. What remained of the old order collapsed entirely at that moment. The killing ensured that no claim could survive within the walls of King's Landing. Long after the fires dimmed and the fighting ceased, this act would define the sack more than any battle, marking the point where victory turned into irrevocable atrocity. The sack of King's Landing claimed another life within the royal family. Princess Rhaenys, the young daughter of Prince Rhaegar, was killed inside the Red Keep as control of the castle collapsed. Like her brother, she was taken in the private chambers meant to shield her from the violence consuming the city. No defense remained, and no authority intervened. The death was not the result of battle, but of intrusion into spaces once considered untouchable. With her killing, the last living children of Rhaegar were extinguished, leaving no surviving heirs within the capital. The act carried no strategic value, only finality. It ensured that the fall of the dynasty would be complete and irreversible. The silence that followed within the Red Keep was heavier than the sounds of the sack outside its walls. Princess Rhaenys' death marked the end of the Targaryen line in King's Landing, sealing the cost of victory with a crime that would echo long after the war ended. Inside the seized Red Keep, the reign of King Aerys II came to an end. Cut off from authority and stripped of command, the king was killed within the walls of his own stronghold. The act ended any remaining threat to the city and brought final closure to a reign marked by fear and instability. No proclamation followed, and no public ceremony marked the moment. The death occurred away from the streets, but its consequence spread immediately through the capital. With Aerys gone, the Iron Throne was left without a ruler, and the last justification for resistance vanished. The city, already shattered by sack and betrayal, no longer faced annihilation from its own king. The death of the Mad King did not restore order, but it ended uncertainty. A reign that had consumed itself in paranoia concluded in isolation, not with victory or defense, but with silence. From that moment forward, the old regime ceased to exist in fact as well as in name. With the Red Keep fallen and the king dead, the last surviving members of the royal family faced immediate danger. Queen Rhaenyra fled King's Landing under guard, leaving the capital behind as chaos consumed the city. Her departure was urgent and quiet, carried out before new authority could fully assert control. Ships were prepared without ceremony, and the escape route led east across the narrow sea to Dragonstone, the ancient Targaryen stronghold. The flight marked the final withdrawal of the dynasty from the capital it had ruled for generations. No attempt was made to rally support or reclaim power from the city. Survival replaced sovereignty as the sole priority. As the ships departed, the connection between the Targaryens and King's Landing was severed completely. The Queen's escape ensured that the royal line would not end within the city's walls, even as its rule there came to an absolute close. On Dragonstone, far from the fallen capital, the Targaryen line endured one final trial. Amid a fierce storm battering the island, Queen Rhaenyra gave birth to a daughter. The birth took place in isolation, within the ancient fortress that had once marked the beginning of Targaryen conquest. As wind and rain lashed the cliffs, Daenerys Targaryen was born into a world already shaped by loss. Her arrival followed the destruction of her family's power and the death of her father, leaving her without a throne or protection beyond exile. The storm that marked her birth would later give her a name tied to survival rather than rule. With no court, no banners, and no celebration, her birth was quiet and precarious. Yet it ensured that the Targaryen bloodline did not end with the fall of King's Landing. On Dragonstone, in exile and uncertainty, the last dragon was born. The last queen of the Targaryen dynasty did not survive her exile. On Dragonstone, weakened by hardship and childbirth, Queen Rhaenyra died shortly after giving birth to her daughter. Her death occurred far from the capital she once ruled, within the cold stone walls of the ancestral fortress that now served as refuge rather than seat of power. No court attended her passing, and no banners marked the moment. With her death, the final link to the old royal household was severed. The Targaryen presence in Westeros was reduced to children and memory alone. Rhaenyra's passing ended decades of confinement, fear, and loss, but offered no resolution or justice. It left her newborn daughter without a mother, and the dynasty without its last adult protector. The silence that followed her death on Dragonstone confirmed that the Targaryens were no longer rulers, but survivors. From that moment, exile was no longer temporary, but permanent. With Queen Rhaenyra dead and Dragonstone no longer secure, the last Targaryens faced imminent danger. Loyal retainers arranged a quiet escape for the remaining children before hostile forces could arrive. Viserys, still a boy, was removed from the ancestral fortress together with his newborn sister, Daenerys. No banners marked their departure, and no claim was made in their name. Ships were readied in haste, and the flight was conducted under cover of urgency rather than ceremony. The escape ended nearly 3 centuries of Targaryen rule in Westeros, reducing the once dominant dynasty to fugitives. Dragonstone, birthplace of conquest and final refuge, was left behind without resistance. As the ships carried the children eastward, the line of kings became a line of exiles. Survival replaced ambition, and memory replaced power. From this moment, the future of House Targaryen would be shaped beyond the shores of the Seven Kingdoms. With the royal family scattered or dead, organized resistance in the name of House Targaryen came to an end. No armies remained in the field, no strongholds declared loyalty, and no commanders issued orders in the fallen dynasty's name. Across the realm, banners were lowered and garrisons surrendered without battle. The absence of resistance was not negotiated, it was acknowledged as fact. Castles that had once served the crown accepted new authority or chose silence over defiance. The war concluded not with a final clash, but with the recognition that nothing remained to fight for. The Targaryen claim no longer existed in practice within Westeros, only in memory and exile. This end was quiet, definitive, and irreversible. The collapse closed nearly 3 centuries of rule, replacing dragon lords with new powers and new alliances. With resistance extinguished, the Seven Kingdoms entered a period of transition where victory would be claimed not through conquest, but through succession. With Targaryen resistance extinguished, authority passed formally to the victor. Robert Baratheon was crowned King of the Seven Kingdoms in King's Landing, marking the official end of the old dynasty and the beginning of a new reign. The ceremony restored public order after weeks of chaos, presenting stability where uncertainty had ruled. Lords and guards assembled under controlled conditions as the crown was placed upon Robert's head, transforming a rebel leader into a monarch. No declaration of conquest accompanied the act. The coronation itself served as confirmation enough. The Iron Throne changed hands without contest, signaling acceptance across the realm. The city, still bearing scars of war, witnessed a return to ceremony and hierarchy. With the crown secured, the war concluded not with further bloodshed, but with legitimacy. Robert's coronation unified victory, authority, and succession into a single moment, establishing the rule that would define the realm in the war's aftermath. The story does not end here. The history of Westeros continues in the chapters yet to be uncovered.